welcome to another episode of the Lucrative podcast. I am your host, the one, the only, Magneto 7 in the building. That's me. So listen, y'all know every time I do a podcast, I try to give y'all something like this, just new, exciting, and listen. Okay, tonight I'm gonna have to calm it down. Because the person I have in the building right now, she is not only, an author. She's a model, media personality, political person, figure skater, and just a wonderful, beautiful soul. We have Miss Elizabeth Pipko in the building. How are you, man?
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here. How are you?
I am good. I'm good.
Good.
It's been a pretty long day. How was your day, first off?
I can't complain. You know, every day on Earth's a good one, right?
Okay. Now, what city are you in?
Currently, I'm in Boynton Beach, Florida.
Boynton Beach, Florida. Okay, so you are
Yes.
East Coast just like me.
Yes.
Okay,
Where
good.
are you?
I'm in Atlanta.
Oh, okay, cool.
So-
I will be flying over you on Wednesday.
So you're based where? In New York, New Jersey?
Between New York and Florida.
Okay, cool. So, we're going to just jump straight in, right? Tell the people, the Mad Lucrative listener, who is Miss Elizabeth Pipko. Now, am I saying your last name right? Am I saying it
Pipko,
right?
yeah. You got it.
All right, good deal. Who are you?
If only I knew, honestly. I feel like there's so many answers to that question, and I always get asked, and then like later on that night, you know, when you think about something and you're like, oh, I should have said that.
Right.
That's what always happens when I get asked this question. I don't know. I feel like your intro was pretty solid.
Okay.
I would just say I'm someone who likes to do a hell of a lot of different things, and I'm trying to figure out how to be one of the first few people to kind of succeed at all of those different things and kind of make their own lane, if that makes sense.
So would you say you're a scatterbrain? Like an organized scatterbrain?
Yeah, I'm like a very good mix of like a psychotic, organized control freak or a scatterbrain. There's like no in between.
Oh.
You know?
Okay,
Yeah.
I see. Now, your birthday is when? When's your birthday?
My birthday, June 26th.
So that makes you a...
Cancer.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I get it.
You get it?
I
don't know anything about this. Like, I never understand when people ask this stuff. Is that good or bad?
It's good.
Okay.
I would say all of the friends that I have that are cancers are very direct in everything. I'm a Scorpio.
Yes,
I'm a November
very
baby.
direct. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yes, I'm a November baby. So the Scorpios are kind of like artsy, you know. I'm that person.
Yeah.
But I've learned to organize it. Over time, I've learned how to organize it. So
Good. Okay, good.
So as far as your family, your upbringing, right?
Mm-hmm.
How was that? Because I did read that you were Jewish, right? Right.
I am, yes.
And you grew up in the U.S. or no?
Yeah, I grew up in New York City. So both
Okay.
of my parents are immigrants from the former Soviet Union. I'm basically first generation American. I'm the first girl born in America in my family. And I was very lucky that both of my parents somehow magically settled in New York City. So I was born and raised in the single greatest city in the entire world.
I love New York. I was there for, I'm going to say about a year or so in Whitestone, Queens. I loved it.
Okay. Do you miss it?
No. I don't know.
So you didn't love it that much.
I enjoyed it for the camaraderie and
Yeah.
I like the sport of music and the competition. I enjoyed that. And then the lights, of course, just adds to the whole experience of the whole situation. So
Yes. So what
yes.
did you not enjoy?
Oh, Lord Jesus, you put me on the spot now. I want to say the people. But
that makes sense.
But I learned how to adapt in every environment, right? So I've just learned to, if it's a person that's going to be an ass, I'm just like, okay, it is what it is, and I deal with it.
Yeah,
But
that's a good way to put it.
But being in the South, it's still a few of those people that's kind of like that, but you're going to get spoken to in the morning. Hey, how's your coffee? I'm like, it's great. You want a hug? Give me a hug. And you bring it in. Like, that's the energy in Georgia. So,
yeah. Got
So
it. So I should spend more time in Georgia,
yes,
basically.
you will love it. You will love it.
Yeah.
Now and I wasn't trying to lay on this for a long time, but the people in Georgia are now New York people in Georgia. So it's starting to shift, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you move from one area and they come follow you this way. But it's
Yeah.
cool. I enjoy it though. I enjoy it.
Good. Good. Hopefully too many New Yorkers don't come and like ruin your space, you know?
They're coming.
I know. I
Yeah,
know.
the real estate down here is just like so cheap
Right.
in comparison. And then it's like, yo, I know in Queens I was in a like a one bedroom, not a one bedroom, but it was like a loft. And I think it was
Right.
like $1,800, $1,900 for. I was like, sheesh. Down here, you're gonna get some square footage, maybe even a half acre.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
Yes.
tell me a little bit about your experience in the modeling industry.
Okay.
I've never had a model on the show, so you're gonna get all of these questions.
That's a lot of pressure. It was a lot. Like, to put it mildly, just like imagine being a very, very sheltered teenager. Like, I was very much like kept to myself, super shy, super sheltered. I actually lived in Florida. I was training as a competitive figure skater. I got injured, moved back to New York City. So I reconnected with some old friends, but basically I haven't been there in years. I have a cast on my leg because I had a torn ankle, which took me out for like 2 years, like just out of reality.
Okay.
I am homeschooled at this point, and I get discovered on the street by a photographer who wants to place me in like the biggest modeling agency in the world.
Wow.
So you can imagine I didn't fit very well into that. Like, I think looking back again, like I said earlier, I'm always like, I should have done this or I should have said that. But I was just so out of my comfort zone and so terrified of absolutely everything and everyone that I didn't know what the hell was going on. I think I grew up a lot in that world. Like, I think it taught me most of what I know right now, but I also could say I got very lucky because I lived in New York City with my brother, who I'm very close to, with my parents, my grandparents. A lot of girls get plucked from like whatever their village is that they're discovered in. They're moved to New York City and they're by themselves, having to like figure out like a very, very sketchy world, which is the modeling world. Like, it is disturbing and sketchy and terrifying and amazing, but all those things at once. So I'd say I learned a lot. I'm very lucky that my family was around, because God knows what I would have gotten into if they weren't there. But it's been an amazing journey. I've gone from a few different agencies, different cities, different campaigns and magazines and so many things. And I mean, as like your stereotypical girl, like I still get giddy, like looking at myself on a magazine. So it's been a huge blessing. And I'm very, very lucky that all of it kind of happened in the very strange way that it did.
So tell me this. I want to go back to your point. You were homeschooled before you got into the modeling agency?
Yeah, so I was actually virtual schooled. A lot of people haven't heard of that, but I lived in Florida and I was a competitive figure skater, like wanted to go to the Olympics.
Okay.
I spent like 8 hours a day on the ice. So when you're training for 8 hours a day, you don't get to go to school. So I was virtual schooled, basically homeschooled. Everything's like online, but your mom doesn't teach you. Like, the actual like state has like people that teach you and people in charge and actual professors. So I'd say it's a little better, but the same vibe. Like, I was by myself, no friends, little girl, little math geek in front of the computer who was like thrown out of like Florida and being homeschooled to the middle of New York City and like actual modeling campaigns with real models and real producers and real people. And I had no idea what the hell to do with myself, to be honest. It was a big change for me.
So my main question, because I have girls. I got 2 girls, right?
Okay.
And my youngest is like me. She's going to walk up and talk to anybody. And she's 4. She's 4. And she's the live wire. My oldest is kind of like the socially awkward one, but she's like super creative. So would you say you were socially awkward coming from homeschool going into that industry? Or did it?
I don't know if socially awkward is the right word, because I don't know how I would have been like had I been in like a normal school. Like, I was a very normal child, but going to like high school in New York City, like a lot of my friends did, or experiencing like going to clubs and different things that most teenagers do in New York City.
Right.
Like, all of that was new to me, obviously, because I had left New York and I was, 8 hours a day at like a figure skating rink with other little girls, or I was at home like with my little brother in class. Like, there was no sense of like getting to know other boys or girls or, any of the teenage stuff. So I feel like I was socially awkward because I missed out on that.
Right.
I don't know how I would have been otherwise, but I'd say in general, like socially awkward could also just be a very shy person. So I'd say me and your daughter definitely we'd have a lot in common.
A lot in common. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to dig in, this is a heavy one because I've been back and forth with certain thoughts as it relates to where we are relationally, as far as friendships, marriages, just all of the above, right? And I keep seeing the subject modern woman come up.
Okay.
And I'm 83. So I'll be 40 in November, right? A lot of the way I view certain things are based on, of course, Southern values. Some of my friends might call me one of the only conservatives. Hint, hint. And it creates a feisty situation because I don't know that the term modern woman is the correct term for just somebody just want to shoot off and just do whatever. But I'll let you. What's your thoughts on this modern woman feminist movement that's going on right now?
Okay, I'll be honest. When you said modern woman, I was like, I don't think I've heard that before. So I don't really know what people would mean when they say it. Like, my mind went to a very positive place, like, oh, modern woman, a woman who has her shit together and wants to like have an amazing career, but also be a great wife, but also like have an education and do all those things.
Okay.
Based on what you followed that up with, I'm pretty sure other people have a different opinion of the term. But I would just say in recent years, I've noticed that like the parents that I grew up with and the upbringing that I had was not common. Like I genuinely thought everyone had the same upbringing, and then I wondered why I made different decisions than other girls did, maybe like growing up, teenage or like early 20s.
Right.
Now I'm understanding that my parents instilled some like very meaningful values in me that a lot of people don't have.
Right.
I think a lot of that comes with, being a woman in today's world. I didn't really notice they were doing it, but the aspect of like making sure that you respect yourself, that you only spend time with people who also respect you, that you make decisions that you're not going to regret in the future, that you do things that really you would be proud of no matter what, no matter when it was that you were thinking back to it, or no matter who you were telling those things to.
Right.
I just feel like all those things kind of stuck with me from my upbringing. But unfortunately, I think a lot of people did not get as lucky as I did with my amazing parents, truly.
Right.
And you kind of factor in like the new age of social media and all those things that I was so lucky to avoid. And to be honest, like to be very frank, I'm kind of scared of what this next generation is going to do, especially the young girls, because the things I'm seeing on social media kind of terrify me. So imagining like 13, 14, 15-year-old girls, or even your daughters, like seeing that, knowing they have access to that, like at the tips of their fingers, It's kind of scary. And I don't really know what kind of women those girls are going to become because of that,
Yeah. And I guess for me, I look at I look at us as a society, right, as a whole. And I think of the lineage of people. Now, whether people hate their families or their bloodline, or however they feel about that. Overall, if we have a decrease in people having babies because a certain agenda is being pushed, and then like I think even my wife was showing me it was a guy. It was something that was saying the natural women aren't the real women anymore. And I was just like, that I can't fathom that concept. It just does not sit well with me, right? And I just look at, okay, are you married?
I am, yes.
Okay, you're married. Great. Do you believe in the idea or the concept of gender roles?
Yeah, I think in society, like people will teach you different things about whether gender roles could be good or bad. But I'd say there's a reason that they've been around for so long. There's a reason that we bring them up. And I think everyone might do it their own way. But I think it's safe to say that they will always exist. It's just like it's a part of our nature and who we are. And science doesn't lie. Like there are different roles for different genders. And I think everyone kind of rolls with that in their own way. But I think in every relationship, you will find that there's a role for one person and a very different role for the other.
Right. Exactly. I always like to use, and again, I'm a little bit country. I was born in North Carolina, And
Okay.
I kind of jumped around in the music business. So I was in New York, LA, everywhere. And we settled in Atlanta, and it's like, okay, if, I try to choose my words right because I don't want to be flagged for nothing. So,
Of course.
as it relates to gun reform and the idea of, oh, they're gonna come take your guns. When I hear certain phrases like that, and again, me being the black guy, that's the more conservative in the bunch. I think of just common sense. Like if somebody came into my house, as I've said plenty of times, if somebody came into my house at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, what do you think I'm gonna do? What do you think I need to use?
Exactly.
It's A and B, A and B,
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So now, within that movement, the feminist movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you think it is swaying politics?
It's a good question. I think movements in general, like I think people don't realize how culture influences politics. I think people like to separate the two, but they don't realize, especially with the younger generation and those that kind of have no way around keeping up with culture. Like it's their everyday lives. It's what they see, what they read, even if they don't notice it, they are a part of culture, which is constantly evolving.
Right.
And that influences their values. It influences their faith. It influences their relationship, and it certainly influences their politics.
Right.
So I'd say any movement, for example, feminist movement, I think influences people's politics more than they realize. So I think a lot of people came on board too late with saying, oh, we're super for this or super against this, because they've now realized that it's become very political. I think if people on the right, who I'd say if you were talking about this, people on the right would be more against it, people on the left would be more for it.
Right.
If people on the right realized years ago how important culture was, I think the feminist movement and all movements would have kind of evolved very differently. I think it's because a lot of movements nowadays, I don't want to say get hijacked, but get taken over by people in one political party because the other one just doesn't think that it's relevant.
I agree.
They don't realize how important culture can be. I think that's why the feminist movement might be where it is today, why it might evolve in a different direction in 10 years. But I'd say most movements nowadays, people don't realize it, but culture is politics and politics is culture. And they kind of evolve based on what different political parties see they can turn them into and whether they want to work with them or not. So what you see right now is a group of people predominantly on the left who are part of a culture that they believe only belongs to those on the left because the Democratic Party or those on the left chose to kind of embrace that, whereas the right didn't. And I think that's their mistake because now this looks like something that a lot of people on the right might not want to be a part of. And now we're divided on an issue which should be very basic, equal rights for men and women.
Exactly.
So I'd say if people in politics realized how important our culture and different movements was to young people, I think most movements would look very, very different.
Okay. Do you think that it's I don't want to say it, but I do want to say it. Do you? That's the Scorpio in my brain. I have like the little demon on this shoulder and like the angel on this. So, do you feel like in a little conspiracy world, right?
Okay.
It's a form of population control to push certain agendas, to get certain policies greenlit. Yeah.
Good question. We're going straight into like getting canceled and getting this video removed everywhere, but I
always have these conversations. I always have just try to skate.
I don't mind any conversation.
Yeah, just skate thin. Just skate thin. We'll say that. But it's
I think it's strange that there are people in this world, and I think it goes like you can check. I'm sure there are stats to prove that more and more people, more and more women, let's say every year, are less interested in like being married and having kids. So I'd say if you were to look at it statistically, I'm sure you can definitely prove your point. So I don't know like big picture conspiracy theory, like how deep we want to go. But I do think if you look at the stats from just when I was a little girl, and most little girls talked about wanting to grow up and be wives and mothers versus what a lot of little girls want today, that's, only a 20-year difference. And I'm sure we can find some pretty scary stats to kind of prove your point.
Yeah.
So I don't know if everyone realizes it or everyone's in on it or anything else, but I'm sure there's plenty of stats that would prove at least that someone out there can show that population is being controlled in one way or another. And I think that's scary to a lot of people. I think a lot of people go very quickly with what's in front of them because their friends are doing it and don't really look into why they might be believing it or speaking out about it or posting about it or whatever else.
Right.
So I don't know if everything, like, I don't think people actually are in on anything that's going on, like conspiracy theory wise, that you and I are talking about. I think we're talking about it because no one's in on it and no one knows what exactly is going on.
Right.
But it's a fair question because I'm sure, like you said, I'm sure we can look back at the last few years and like what your little girls are talking about versus what I was talking about when I was in school. And I'm sure things have changed. So
right.
I'm sure there's a case to be made. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I think I just look at even the jobs that certain people choose, right?
Yeah.
On my I have like 1,000 jobs. My granddad used to call me an African because I had like 1,000 things going on all the time. But in my construction job where we flip houses and stuff like that, I've never had a vendetta against hiring a woman in this position of like a hard labor job, like tile or woodwork or anything. It's fine. If you do a good job, I don't care who you are. But I've seen it over, I don't know how many properties I've done now. It's been a while, right? I've never seen a woman jump at the option to go do some tile work or concrete, like pouring the concrete driveway. I haven't seen it out of all the years that I've done it. But I have seen where the Hispanic women will come over, right? And I don't know if it's because a lot of them are Americanized yet, but I've seen them come over and they're working side by side with their husband on the hard labor jobs, and I'm just like, so would the new feminist modern woman call her a strong woman, or would they say that she's with a weak man because he's allowing her to do that? Or even the idea of allowing, like, I'm just confused. It's so many different, just random stuff going on right now. And I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Random is a good way to put it. I feel like you kind of like, you have to look around and see who's around you before you can like form an opinion on something. Because it depends like what university you're in or what city you're in or what state you're in or what side of the country you're in. Because everyone around you, depending on like who's around them, kind of feels a different way about like the very same stat. And they can move like 50 miles to the left and be in a different community. And that same exact sentence can be said and it'll like totally be a different, decision or a different translation or something else. It's like a very weird time. And I feel like it kind of depends who you're around and what you want to take from something that's, going to decide how you actually like view something. So it's a very weird time. I feel like people are kind of lost and they're kind of looking for their own answers, much like you and I are on a lot of these questions.
Yes.
But I feel like they're looking in the wrong places, if that makes sense. Like they're looking around them to see what those in their community tell them versus, wanting to do research or learn for themselves without having some like weird politicized approach to whatever they want to be studying that day,
Right. Now, speaking of weird, and I got a few more questions. And I told you 30 minutes. I'm aiming for the 30. I promise I'm trying. But so what's your thoughts on, and I think it's a little bit goofy. But it's real. It's a real thing. The AI stuff, right?
Okay.
I know from a producer's perspective, I've seen where I think it was like a Drake song and like a Tupac song blended together, and it's a new song using Tupac's voice and Drake's voice produced by AI, and it's like, this is weird, right?
Right.
But then the part I want to ask you about is the AI models and how that's going to change the modeling industry. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
To be honest, I'm just confused. Like, when I first got signed to an agency, again, like, yes, I was terrified, but it was still like, it'd be pretty intense for anyone. Like, if you looked at my contract, it was like, this is your height and this is your weight and this is your hair color and your eye color and number of piercings or anything else when you got signed. And none of these things can change because we want you to look like this. I was measured constantly. I was weighed constantly. People wanted to know if I got a haircut of like 1 inch, my agency wanted to know because they wanted my look to be what it was. So I'd say if models are forced to work that hard to have a specific look, I'm very confused as to why we're making young women go through that, but then just hiring fake AI generated models instead.
Right.
So it's very strange. I don't know if that means like the modeling agency is going to be like eliminated altogether, because why would we put young women through such like a grueling, work, especially young. I mean, they're not adults. Like some of these women, they start as girls, like 13, 14.
Wow.
Why would you put, young girls do something so strenuous and so intense and so, it's scary. It's honestly even scary, but let's just say strenuous. Like it's hard to like eat healthy and work out regularly and keep a certain physique, especially growing up, going through puberty. Why would we go through that? Focus on, young girls, young women, and what it takes to keep them looking a certain way when we can just, create fake women on the internet and hire them. So I'm very confused by it, but I'd say I don't know what it means for modeling after this. Like, I don't know why any person would want to hire a human that comes with obviously some kind of issues versus hiring a computer who's going to be there on time, for example, who's not going to worry about having a pimple that day, who can't gain a pound or lose a pound, or who can't, I had a model friend who got fired from a job because she showed up with like a tan. Like, these issues won't exist anymore if you can just create fake models on your computer. So I'm very confused by the whole thing, but I'd say it's a strange thing to compete with. I don't know how a young woman in the modeling world would compete with an AI generated model. Like you can't win there.
You can't. Oh Lord. So do you think it would be a better situation if we started to generate, or you guys from the modeling business start to generate like smaller communities that patronize like the mom and pops type of brands, and then you kind of keep the work flowing like that? Because I personally don't have the confidence in mankind to say we're not going to use AI models, or we're not going to use AI music producers, because we want to stay true to the brand and true to the art. Like, they're about the bottom line.
Well, I have no confidence in society at all, to be honest with you. I'm trying to think how to say it. I would think in general, it would be cool, like you said, to have like mom and pop shop type agencies, like to do everything smaller. Mm-hmm. But when you're a young woman and you're starting to model, like you want to model for, let's say Louis Vuitton, or you want to walk a runway for, Marc Jacobs, like you want to do all these things. So I'd say when you want to do that, it means you want to be in the biggest city. Like you probably want to be in New York. It means you want to be with the best agency in the world, like Ford Models, New York Models, Wilhelmina Models.
Right.
So I don't really know if we have options. If you're doing it just as like a side gig, for sure. But if you want to compete like with the big guns and you want to be out there and you want to hope to be in Maxim or Sports Illustrated or Victoria's Secret or whatever it is, you kind of have to be in New York City with the biggest agencies in the world and like really competing against the best. Right. I always assumed that the best was going to be like the top models, like the Tyra Banks of my generation. I didn't think the best was going to be a computer generated woman, but I guess that's where we are now.
I got a good question for you too, as it relates to the modeling. So you've been in for a while. Can you say that the modeling business changed when social media started to get hot and started to just get legs and run? Like, are you finding that a lot of the jobs you're trying to get, you're competing with the IG model or a TikTok person?
Yeah, I think in general, people realize like the money, the reach, that comes with social media followings. And I don't think, like we're talking about the fake models, even when you go with a real model, you can still Photoshop her to look however you want.
True.
So I don't think they're always going to go with the girl that has the look they want. If a different girl can be, easily Photoshopped to look like that, but she has 200,000 followers on TikTok that are going to see whatever, outfit it is that she's modeling for you. So I'd say it's hard to compete because before it was about, and it was difficult, but it was about staying fit, staying skinny, being tall, being on time, being beautiful. Obviously, like modeling was what it was. Now it's very different because you want more eyes on something, and social media is the way to do that. And I don't think that existed back in the day. So I don't want to say everything is, ruined per se, but it's definitely difficult. And I don't know if the same like supermodels who became supermodels 30 years ago could have become supermodels if social media existed, for example,
Right. Now, I will say I have a feed going, and they're shooting off. They're shooting off different questions. I'm gonna save some of those. I'm gonna give you like 2 of them. We'll get 2 of them from there. But
okay.
I wanted to dig in on your books, right? because I will have the links for everybody to download the books below. Y'all will have that. But what prompted you to write? I'm gonna start I'm gonna start backwards, right? Finding my place, making my parents' dream come true. That feels like it's a little jab as a book title. Like, did it come from a fun place, or did it come? Like, I'm making your dream come true. This is not about me. This is about you.
Oh my God, that's the first time I've heard that. No, not at all. Oh my God. My parents are very big on the guilt. So I feel like if they read it that way, they would have already guilted me for this. So luckily they didn't see it the same way. No, I just feel like there's like a very intense pressure on me. And I'm sure a lot of like children of immigrants feel that. But my parents went through absolute hell to get here. They came with like $90 each in their pockets. My father said goodbye to his father, who we never got to see again. They lost, jobs, money, resources, family. I mean, they lost everything to come here. So I just say it's like a very big responsibility on my shoulders to not just, make myself happy and proud of who I am, but to make my parents' sacrifice worth it. So I'd say that's the title of the book. No shade to my parents, I promise. But okay. I'm like very curious if anyone else read it this way now. Like now I'm wondering if other people think the same thing.
Yeah. I always pick all options. I can hear the good kind one, then I hear the spicy one. Like I'm just, yeah. So when it relates to, I guess, certain Jewish customs in the Jewish community, what would you say is like the biggest myth that exists?
Very good question. I've never gotten that question before. Myth. I think in general, I'd say I'm like a very strange Jew. Like that's like probably the best way I could put it. Like if you were to like Google me or see someone like a modeling campaign I've done or see me on a magazine or whatever else, you would not think I was like a religious person. And I totally understand that. But on the other end of that, like I eat kosher and I go to synagogue almost like every Friday and Saturday for Shabbat. And like I just live a very religious life and people wouldn't assume that. So I'd say the myth would be that people in the Jewish community don't accept me as that person. In reality, I get a lot more questions and ugly comments from people that aren't Jewish, whereas those in like the Orthodox Jewish community, for example, embrace me and are proud of me and are some of the nicest people I've met in general when it comes to a lot of my work and decisions I've made. So I'd say the myth would be that we're not like accepting of those that might want to live in their own, their own religious way.
So are the kids or the people that ends up picking, I guess, a job in the entertainment business or the fashion industry or any of the secondary jobs, are they like looked down on when it comes to, I guess, Jewish customs?
I wouldn't say look down on. I'd say people are very curious. There's a lot of people that are very religious who kind of close themselves off from those kinds of opportunities. So I'd say it's more so just being curious about what's out there, because a lot of people that want to be very religious, they just don't allow themselves into that world. Right. So it's more curiosity than anything else from those in like the religious community, based on how I try to manage like both aspects of my life and how I find a very happy medium, I would say.
Okay, I love it. Last question on that. So what would you say is the biggest attribute to the Jewish community or the Jewish custom?
I'd say, there's a million I can come up with, but I'd say something's really special. I was explaining this to someone the other day, but I'd say most countries, if not all countries, you can go anywhere in the world and you can find a Chabad. You can Google that term. A lot of people don't understand, but you will find a Chabad, which is like a small, it'll be a small synagogue or a small home of someone's. They'll have kosher food. They'll pray with you. They'll welcome you into, their home for the night, and you'll know that you're not alone. So a lot of Jews, because we've kind of been exiled in different ways and kicked out of every country we've ever been in, Jews are everywhere in the world. Despite being a very tiny people, we have a very small presence, but I'd say in most, if not all countries around the world. So knowing that wherever you go, you do have a home, and there will be a Jew who will welcome you and give you kosher food and a bed to sleep in. It's just a really nice feeling. And I don't think people realize that Jews, even those that don't know each other, are family in one way or another.
That's amazing. So, okay, I got to pick the funny. I hear the funny in what you just said. So, you can go to anybody's house as a stranger, and long as you're practicing, you're a part of the Jewish family, they're gonna just welcome you in. Like, there's no like.
Yeah, that's actually. Yeah, that's something I was taught as like a very young girl. If there was a Jewish holiday, for example, coming up, I would always ask around in synagogue, even though it never happened. I'd ask around to see if everyone had a place to go that night for the holiday, because we're taught like very early on that you have to welcome every stranger into your home. Everyone should have like a meal and a glass of wine and a place to celebrate, and no one should ever be left out. So truly, if you go anywhere in the world as a Jew, I promise you will be able to have a home somewhere. Guarantee it.
Wow. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I never knew that.
Yeah.
And okay, I guess I wanted to pick Sweet 16 is a while ago. So I'll go to the About You. What prompted you to write that book?
Okay, so long story short, I was like a very emotional teenager. I got very injured when I was 16 years old. I tore my ankle. I think I mentioned that I was in a cast.
Yeah.
For close to a year. I barely walked for 2 years. I was in physical therapy and like different treatments and things for, I think, 5 to 7 years. It was a very difficult time. I also was kind of discovering the world again because I just moved back to New York. I started, dating and like other things that young people do. And I went through a very, very difficult few years. And for some reason, the only thing that helped me was writing poetry. So both Sweet 16 and About You were both basically just diaries of mine. I happened to put my thoughts on paper and they happened to rhyme. And I started writing poetry anytime I felt a very, very dark cloud kind of coming over me, much like you with your music. Poetry kind of became like the one thing that like kind of calmed me down at the end of the day and let me, embrace all my emotions. And I put it on paper, and eventually it just turned into a book, and then it turned into a book again a few years later. So it's definitely not like my future, but it was something that meant a lot to me. And getting messages from young girls that I've gotten saying I read this and like it resonated with me and it made me feel better because I know that someone else at 18 years old felt the things that I'm feeling now. Right. Like those messages are some of the most special ones I get. And I'd say it's not like my proudest accomplishment, but I'd say it was what made like being a teenager and like all those horrible years, it's what made them kind of okay. It was getting to put those emotions on paper and then later getting them published.
That's pretty cool. So,
thank you.
So were they published after years later, or were these published like around the same time period?
Same time period. I'd say a few years after they were written, but pretty much same time period. I think Sweet 16 I wrote when I was 16 years old. It came out when I was 18. Okay. And then About You, I probably wrote like 18 to 20. And then it probably came out like a year or two later. So I'd say that the young years where everything's kind of going on, they came out during those young, horrible years.
Well, I commend you because I don't know that I would have had the determination to get it finished. I would have just started and be like, all right, I'll get to it at some point. So, okay, the last thing I wanted to ask,
thank you. I don't even know if it was determination, but I'm glad it's out there and I'm glad it's done.
Okay. So last thing, as I told you in the beginning, I want to make sure that I want to give you space to, I guess, give encouraging words to the ladies that might be in your position. The 16-year-old version of you, give her some advice that might be able to help her, I guess, make better choices. Because it's a lot of bad choices that they can make now. Social media is presenting all of them. So give them some words of advice.
Okay, I'm going to try to keep it simple. When I was very young, I would sit and do a lot of like my schoolwork in my dad's office at home because I liked being in his office because I liked feeling like him. And he had this little postcard on his desk and it had a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote on it. And it said, "Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail." And I don't think I realized in the moment like how much that quote was going to resonate with me and like become a part of me. But I used to like sit and write my little papers for school and just read it over and over and over again. And then later on, looking back, I realized like that quote actually led me most of the way as I was growing up. You're going to find a lot of opportunities to go exactly exactly where the path leads, where everyone else has taken. It's going to be the path that everyone has taken before you, the path that everyone encourages you to take, and usually the path that's actually easier to take. But the path that you want to take is the one that's meant for you, and that one usually goes in a very different direction. And it's hard to find, I get it, but once you're on it, you're going to understand why everything in your life has happened to you and what your future is going to look like. And you're going to realize who you are and why who you are is so special and why the path was there to begin with. So never go where the path may lead, though it might be easier. Go where there's no path and leave a trail for those that will come after you.
I love it. I love it. I got to give you a clap for that one. That was great. And my clap is not coming. There it is. There we go. There we go. There we go. So tell the people, how can they reach you?
Oh, how can they reach me? I mean, they can show up at my house. Like I said, no one's a stranger. But no, you can reach me at, I think, Elizabeth Pipko on Twitter, Instagram, and possibly Facebook. I'm not good at this, but wherever anyone can have an account, it should just be my name, Elizabeth Pipko. And I will gladly connect with absolutely anyone.
All right. Well, there you have it, y'all. Miss Elizabeth Pipko in the building. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was great. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I hopefully will talk to you very soon. Have a good night.
All right. Bye.